Here's the United performance under Ruben Amorim. 11 wins, one of which came in a shootout. 26 games in charge. Those 10 defeats knocked out the FA Cup in the 5th round, the League Cup quarter-finals. But there is the hope of the Europa League round of 16 with the second leg to come against Real Sociedad on Thursday. Is that what a good job looks like?
No, I think people would have envisaged that it would have been a lot better. And what we've got to remember is, I think when clubs change managers at either end of the table, it might be a case near the bottom. They think, OK, maybe we'll change something because we want to try and stay in the Premier League. Manchester United weren't a million miles away from the top 4 positions. Obviously so, because there wasn't that many games played. I think they were only 5 or 6 points off the Champions League positions. One of the reasons why you change Erik ten Hag is because you think, I don't think we're going to get there with this manager. Let's roll the dice. We're not just doing it for this season. Obviously, we're thinking of this guy for the next 2 or 3 years. But there was a fear in that. Can a new manager instill a little bit more than what this manager's and maybe push us into the Champions League position? So to find themselves where they are now in the table, that was never the plan. It's never really acceptable. And we've highlighted the system on this show. We've highlighted in the game at Liverpool how well it worked as well. And I can't stand here and say I want it to go well. That'd just be ridiculous. But he's a young manager. He looks the part. He sounds the part. You're thinking, OK, what have you got? And I must say I've been disappointed with it. I must say that in terms of, doesn't mean like there's been a real improvement in the team. We know that for the results, but also individual players. There's nothing to really hang your hat on. There was early on with Ahmad. You think, OK, is he a wing back? Is he a number 10? He's doing well. He's had an influence here. But now, since he's been injured, I can't really see an awful lot. And the problem for Amorim going forward with that is that you want the buy-in for next season. We know this season's a little bit probably, not written off. They've got the Europa League. But you want that buzz going into next season with your players, with your supporters, with your staff. I think if you continually lose, it's hard to generate that enthusiasm going into next season.
What have you made it as a manager yourself, Russell? Going into a club like Manchester United, where you know you have to win because of the scrutiny. Every defeat is a crisis at a club like this. But he has been so determined to wed his players to this ideal of this system right from the off.
I think if results aren't coming, so it's a big job anyway, so everyone knew that, Erik ten Hag changed, and I think they made the change because the game looked different a lot for Manchester United, and Manchester United fans and owner, I'm sure, will expect the team to be dominant. So like as dominant as they can, whether it's attacking, creating chances. So I presume they brought Ruben in for that reason. So the team looks like it evolves in a certain way with a style and is dominant. But yesterday against Arsenal, they have less than 40% possession at home, I think. So if the results aren't coming, I think you need to see the style being implemented.
He did say yesterday, this is not the way that we want to play long term. We just have to adapt to try and get results in the short term.
Which you understand, but if you've been brought in to instill something that you've been really good at your previous club, that it would then be a bit of a worry that you're going back to, this is not how we're going to play, but we need to do this now. So it's like, it's that balance of long term and short term. I'm convinced after watching his Lisbon team, I really enjoyed them, that he will get it going. But it's probably taken him longer than he would have expected or would have liked. It's probably taken the owner and everyone else involved longer than they would have liked. So everyone has to be a bit patient, which, as we know, is not prevalent in football.
But Russell, he's been criticised for not changing the system and almost being too sort of dogmatic with that. You've been questioned this season about sort of your style of playing, not changing that. I mean, how do you see it in terms of that?
Like, the formation is fine if the concept is the same. So if you're playing the formation but the game looks different one week to the next. So I don't really believe it's about formation. I think Graham would have said that to you earlier.
But he said he's not changing his formation.
Which is fine, as long as the game looks similar every week and there's a bit of improvement in something, or the concept of the game is we're going to dominate the ball, or we're not. We're going to, Nottingham Forest, we're going to mid-block or low-block, and then we're going to counter. So it doesn't change. The formation can change. If he's not going to change, then the concept should look similar. And I think that's at the minute where they're struggling, where the game still looks different. So the formation doesn't change, but the game still doesn't quite look the same week on week, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with the end and ask you to sum up your first 12 months in charge at United. Review yourself.
Right. Well, I think in a funny sort of way, it's gone as we anticipated it would. We didn't think the first year was going to be easy because we had difficult things to do. But I think, the club is bigger than, until you actually arrive in the club, it's bigger than you think, and the scrutiny is bigger than you anticipate, because you get your school report at the end of every day instead of at the end of every term. I used to get a clip around the ear once every term by my mother, but now I get a clip around the ear every day by the press, you know. So those things are sort of slightly, you know, I suppose unanticipated or underestimated. But I think broadly where we are, which I know is a difficult place, and people are not very happy about it at the moment, which is why I'm quite unpopular. It is where I didn't expect in a year of change that we'd be winning the Premier League. Honestly.
Are you finding it hard, the scrutiny, the attention, the criticism?
Well, I used to enjoy picking a newspaper up in the morning, having a cup of coffee and a croissant, you know, which it's not quite so enjoyable anymore. But I think the way, I mean, we've all got our sensitivities, and it isn't pleasant to read some of the press coverage. But the way I get through it is you know, that I believe what we're doing is the right thing, and I believe what we're doing has to be done to get United back to where United should be, which are the winning, you know, silverware and winning trophies and things like that. And we have to go through this. I mean, if you don't like where United have been for the last 12 seasons since Sir Alex retired, then I think, ergo, you have to accept there has to be a period of change, otherwise it's just going to continue. And change is always uncomfortable and unpleasant at times, and that's sort of where we are at the moment, unfortunately.
Do you understand why the fans are angry? Obviously, yesterday they protested at the Arsenal match. Do you understand where it comes from?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, well, I'm a fan as well. Remember, so you know, you know, fans are not going to be happy languishing down at the bottom in the bottom half of the table. And yeah, I get that, and I sympathise, but I didn't think this year was going to be a walk in the park. You know, it was always going to be difficult. And if you look at the squad that Ruben's got available, he's only got half a squad, honestly.
You just said that you're a fan. As a fan, not as an owner, when you go and watch the games, and you have been watching in the last 6 or 7 months, what do you make of the performances?
Well, I mean, I've seen the performances under two. So I don't know whether you're asking me about the previous.
Well,
coach
under Eric and under Ruben now.
Yeah, well, obviously under Eric it was erratic. I think is the best word I'd use. You know, there was some great performance. I mean, when we won the FA Cup against Man City, they all turned up and they played like they were in a cup final. And then at other times, you know, Crystal Palace or whatever, they didn't show up. Under Ruben, what we've seen, I think, is it was difficult at the beginning, and I sort of get that. But then I think we've seen progress. And I think some of the players that we bought in the summer, you've seen them settle. It's quite tough, isn't it? You spent your life playing there. It's not an easy league to play in, and there's a lot of scrutiny. And it's a tough. I mean, look how Xerxes got knocked about. You know, yesterday in the first half, he really got knocked about, didn't he? I mean, he wouldn't be used to that playing in the Italian league. So it takes time for players to settle. But I think, you know, if you look at, I mean, Ruben yesterday against Arsenal, he only had half a squad. I mean, how many players would most people recognise on the bench yesterday? I mean, there was hardly a name that you'd recognise. I mean, the guy that we brought on, Heaven, he's only 18. We only bought him 3 weeks ago from Arsenal, you know. And then we had Obi on there, who's only 16, I think, and he's played once for United. I mean, there was only half. I mean, I think if you look at the top 8 most expensive players that we've got in terms of salary, 4 of them are not available to Ruben. Now, if you did that with Liverpool or Manchester City, that's the cream of your half the cream of your team has gone, you know. So I think I've seen progress.
Where have you seen that progress?
We saw a bit of a glimpse of the future, I thought. On
yesterday?
Sunday. I thought we saw a glimpse of the future, yeah. I did. Yeah.
What, in the second half, you mean?
In the second half, yeah. I thought, you know, they were quite cohesive. You could see a bit of the game plan. And the players played their hearts out for Manchester United. They really did. And you could see it, couldn't you? You could see that Delict tattle. You could see the tattle that Heaven made. I mean, it really meant something to them.
So you think the recruitment from last summer will come good?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
And how do you assess...
But bear in mind, recruitment last summer, we didn't have the luxury of time to prepare for last summer, did we? Jason had been there 3 weeks. Omar had been there 3 days. We had the problem with the coach. Is it a yes or a no? So we involving the coach and not involving the coach.
Did you involve the coach?
Sorry?
Did you involve the coach?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
So Eric signed a lot of those players last summer?
No, he didn't, but he was involved in the discussions and he influenced. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, a decision on a new player or a purchase isn't a decision of one person normally, is it? So,
Yeah.
you know, it's a group of people who influence that decision one way or another. So yeah, he did have a voice, which is why there were one or two Dutch players.
Would you have sacked Eric if you'd have found another manager after the FA Cup final success? Because you were looking around Europe and scouring for a new manager.
It was too early for us to make a big decision in reality, and we hadn't been together as a team for very long. You know, if you look at Omar, Jason, myself, Dave, we hadn't been together for very long. It was just a matter of, you know, weeks, and it's quite a big decision, isn't it? And also, it's quite difficult to, you know, I couldn't. It was quite difficult to extract in that season when we arrived Eric's performance from the structure around him, because obviously the structure around him now is completely different.
Yeah.
So if I look today, there's a really strong relationship and a really strong support culture for Ruben with Jason. So Jason and Ruben talk to each other 2 or 3 times a day. Omar speaks to Ruben every day. Every time I go to the match, I speak to Ruben. So, you know, there's a support structure there, and he's got his coaches and the physios and the doctor and everything else. But it was quite difficult to see whether, you know, what environment Eric was operating in. Was it, in other words, was the erratic performance a function of Eric, or was it a function of the organisation? And we couldn't really get to the bottom of answering that question with sort of certainty, I suppose. We gave Eric the benefit of the doubt.
And you regret that, or do you feel...
Yeah, it was the wrong decision. We made the wrong decision. It was an error. So, yeah, I suppose in that sense I regret it. I think there was some extenuating or mitigating circumstances in having made that decision. But at the end of the day, it was the wrong decision. So, hands up, you know, mea culpa on that one. Yeah.
How do you assess Ruben's first 4 or 5 months? It's also been tough in terms of...
16 draw. All you need to know as Manchester United and Tottenham learn their opponents for the next round of the competition. A fresh look to the Europa League has provided it with added gloss, but the action throughout the competition has been as exciting as ever. The new inclusion of a playoff round prior to the last 16 has also seen some familiar European names fall away at an early stage in the competition. However, Premier League giants Manchester United and Tottenham haven't had to worry, having secured an automatic spot in the last 16 by virtue of finishing in the top 8 of the initial group phase. After Thursday's results, it's now confirmed that the Premier League sides will face either AZ Alkmaar or Real Sociedad in the next round of the competition. The draw to confirm every team's route to the final will be held on Friday, February 21st, which is where things may become somewhat confusing. United and Spurs finished 3rd and 4th in the league table format, meaning they will make up one seeded pair in the draw. Ties for the last 16 are scheduled to be played on Thursday, March 6th, with the return legs a week later on Thursday, March 13th. UEFA state that clubs are paired based on their positions at the end of the league phase to form 4 seeded pairs: clubs in positions 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. The clubs in each seeded pair are drawn into one of 2 positions in the round of 16 against the relevant winner of the knockout phase playoffs, whose position was determined by the knockout phase playoff draw. 4 bowls are prepared for this draw, 2 for the silver side of the bracket and 2 for the orange side of the bracket. Each bowl contains 2 balls representing the winners of the round of 16 matches from one rung of the relevant side of the bracket, with the first silver bowl containing slips of paper marked winners are 16-1 and winners are 16-2, and the second silver bowl winners are 16-3 and winners are 16-4. The first bowl on the orange side will contain slips of paper marked winners are 16-5 and winners are 16-6, and, finally, winners are 16-7 and winners are 16-8 in the second bowl on the orange side. The draw starts by shuffling and then drawing the balls placed in the first bowl of the silver side of the bracket. The first ball drawn from this bowl indicates the team which will play the first match of the quarter-final at home, and the second ball the team which will play the return leg at home.